Welcome to the Spotlight. I'm David Rose, and we begin with a wild story involving the U.S. Marshals, an escaped felon who built ghost guns for the cartel, and his ex-girlfriend who wanted to get him out of her life, but ended up with her life turned upside down. Andrew Kristovich got busted by the feds in 2018 for manufacturing AK-47s for a Mexican drug cartel. He was sent to a minimum security federal prison camp in Sheridan, Oregon. While there, he was communicating with an ex-girlfriend named Shauna via a smuggled cell phone. Kristovich lied and convinced her that he was being released early due to cancer treatments he was undergoing, then threatened to harm her and her young children if she didn't pick him up from prison when he was released. Except he wasn't released. He escaped the prison, hid in the bushes, and then jumped into her car when she arrived to pick him up. He kidnapped and tortured Shauna, then stole her car and went on the run, ditching that vehicle in Edmonds, Washington, and kicking off a multi-state manhunt by the U.S. Marshals. Kristovich's luck ran out in Nevada. Carson City Sheriff Ken Furlong tracked him down to a remote piece of property next to a penitentiary. Kristovich was staying in a tent. Deputies watched the property carefully and saw that there were multiple people with guns and young children. So they brought in 2 SWAT teams in armored vehicles. Sheriff Furlong says when they pulled up, Kristovich stuck his head out of the tent and saw the overwhelming odds. So he tossed this AR-15 on the ground that had 5 magazines with it and gave himself up. Deputies cuffed him and turned him over to the marshals. Kristovich is now back in federal custody and will likely be getting more years in a higher security facility. I spoke with Shauna, who is in hiding right now with her kids.
Are you somewhere safe?
Yes, I'm in a confidential location through a domestic violence shelter.
She tells us she doesn't even recognize her former friend.
He has completely changed, and I don't know who he is anymore. He's somebody very scary.
Shauna says she had messaged Kristovich that she was moving on with her life and thinks that may have set him off.
I think that's why he walked out the doors and he left, was because he didn't want to know that his property was with anybody else because he believed he owned me.
She says Kristovich had cancer in the past, and he told her that due to his treatments, his lawyer was able to secure a compassionate release. Kristovich asked her to pick him up from the prison. She refused, and that's when she says he turned nasty.
He told me that it would be a lot easier on me if I were to be the one to come pick him up, that I didn't want to know if he had to have somebody else bring me to my house, what would happen to me. He said he would rape me in front of my children.
So Shauna says she agreed to go and get him, even though it seemed fishy that he was being released late at night on a Sunday. When she got close to the prison, she says her bad feeling got worse.
When I was pulling up to the prison, he all of a sudden told me to pull in the first driveway right before the prison main entrance. Don't go in the prison main entrance. And I'm going, okay. So I text back, I said, wait a minute, are you not supposed to be getting out? Are you not supposed to be released right now?
At that point, she says he jumped out of the bushes and into her car. He told her to drive away and then ordered her to pull over. Kristovich then drove Shauna with her kids in the back of the vehicle to her apartment.
As much as you can you tell us a little bit about the horror that you experienced, just so people understand, you know, why we are looking so hard for this man?
When we got back to my house, he attacked me for nearly 2.5 hours. He raped me. If I made a noise, he would put his hands around my neck and proceed to strangle me until I passed out 3 times. And I know the only reason that I'm alive is because my neighbors heard the assault and they banged on the wall behind me in my bedroom. They banged on the wall. He panicked and he jumped up, got dressed, and fled out of my house and came back in because he didn't have my keys, and he threatened to kill me at that point, and he took off with my keys, my car. I said, take it. You know, I was more scared for my life. I would have done anything he wanted me to do just to stay alive, because I kept thinking while he had his hands around my neck and I'd start to black out, I just thought, oh my God, my kids are going to wake up and their mom's going to be dead. And what would happen then? What would happen to my boys? What would they have done if I wasn't here?
I'm so sorry for everything that's happened to you, and thank you for sharing that. And you want the world to know what you've been through, because you want this man back in prison where you feel safe again, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I can't go home. I've lost my home. I was able to recover my car, but that costed over $1,000 by the time I was able to get my it out at impound, and then the key fob made and everything else.
Where did they find your car?
They found my car at Burlington Coat Factory in Edmonds, Washington. Yeah.
What about the kids' seats and what kind of condition was it?
The car seats were thrown out the window or gone. I no longer have car seats for my kiddos. The interior of my car was completely trashed. There was all sorts of drug paraphernalia found in my car as well. And I'm grateful that it had a Cadillac converter still in it and that it ran, and that it wasn't involved in an accident.
You were so brave to talk about this. Why are you willing to talk publicly about something so horrific? Why do you feel
because I don't want
motivated?
this to happen to somebody else. And I believe that this isn't the first time he's put hands on a woman or hurt a woman. He was way too comfortable with the way he treated me. And it just came so naturally. So there's no doubt in my mind that he won't do it again. And maybe the next person won't be as fortunate as I was, and they'll lose their life.
Does he look the same in the photos that we've been showing the public?
No, he's definitely over 200 pounds. He's very puffy and swollen. His complexion is really red. I believe that he's on steroids, or he was. And it's like his cheeks are even, like, they're just swollen. It's swollen. He doesn't have the same look. And he has an evil look in his eye.
An update now on a murder mystery we've been following for weeks. It's a tale of two brothers in Seattle. One who was missing, the other shot to death. Arkan, who everybody called AJ, was found on March 17th lying dead on the sidewalk outside of a notorious Seattle homeless camp at 10th Avenue and Dearborn. He had been shot in the chest. His family told detectives AJ was searching for his brother Mike, who was last seen boarding a bus in Michigan heading to Seattle. The spotlight joined retired detective Jim Fuda to hit the streets to put up reward posters from Crime Stoppers to ask anyone who would talk to us if they knew anything about AJ's murder. We met a man on a bike who claimed he knew Arkan. We're trying to solve this murder. Do you mind if we talk to you for just a second? It happened right over here.
Yeah, AJ.
Yeah, do you know AJ?
He used to live over there by the storage.
He said AJ had problems with people in the camp. Any idea who might have wanted to hurt him?
Well, he got a lot of enemies, I know that.
Oh, this guy does?
Yeah, he got sticky fingers.
A claim AJ's family refutes, saying he never lived on the streets. And another man blocks away who said he didn't know AJ personally, but says he knew people who thought AJ may have been staying nearby when he was killed. Lots of conflicting information, but not very credible sources. Then last week, the phone rang. It was Mike, the missing brother, making contact after months, agreeing to sit down and tell us his story. I am so glad to see that you are okay. Everybody has been so worried about you, Mike. Where have you been?
I've been in Berrien, is a place they call Salvation Army, is a program, is 13 months.
Some people might ask why you just didn't call your family.
I don't have my phone. My backpack got stolen, and my phone. I mean, all my belongings got stolen.
My condolences about your brother AJ. I am
you.
so sorry. When did you hear that he had been murdered?
Last month, and it ended last month.
Yeah. So about a month after he was killed. Some family, police thought that he might have been out looking for you in some of the camps. Is that because you had had some personal issues and that's why he thought you might be there?
Yes, they think because when I was in Michigan, they told him I'm sick, and I'm serious. Like my health is really bad. So I think this is why he here. I coming back to Seattle, so he was looking for me.
He was killed in what is now a pretty dangerous part of town. We were over there that day, and the day we were there was a stabbing and a shooting just a block away from where AJ was killed. Yes. Your brother was a pretty brave guy to be out there searching for you.
Me and him are not just a brother. We're just a brother. Like a best friend. We lived together since back home from Iraq. We're going to Saudi Arabia. We're coming here. I don't think we're separated. We live in the same area I was.
Given to what happened to your brother, are you also concerned for your safety?
Yes.
Why is that?
I've been watch, and I see people like same people. If I ride the bus, or walk in the street, there's a certain people I see same person. If it's in the bus with me, or in the train with me, or like I see them same places where I am,
Well, it could be that I put your picture out and ask people to try to find you. Do you think it's as simple as that or something more?
No, I believe it's bigger than that. I really believe. I think my brother knows something.
You don't think this was random?
No, I don't believe so.
I'm just trying to understand. You know?
No, I see people watching me. I know the people watching. That's not a police watching me. They're not police.
Yeah. I commend you for getting help. It's hard.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But don't can't carry that guilt with you. It'll eat you up.
I mean, somebody died for me. My best friend is dead. My brother died for me. Because of me, he's dead.
We met a guy on the street that said your brother was homeless. Was your brother homeless, or was he living with this girlfriend?
No, he lived with his. I know he lived with his girlfriend.
There's one piece of the puzzle we haven't been able to figure out, and that's this woman that AJ was dating.
Yes.
She will not talk to us. She has declined our requests for interviews. Have you spoken with her?
I did. And it's hard for me because she told me something. My family else told me she say something else.
Changing stories.
Story totally, I was changed.
Do you think there are people who know who killed your brother?
I believe so.
So that's why it's important. We keep getting the word out.
I really believe so. And for my, I don't feel safe.
Was there anything you guys were involved with that would make somebody come after you?
No, but something about his relationship, something I have to do with his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Some Kim, lying, all these lying and stuff. I mean, why she have to lie about something she loved?
Yeah.
I know he loved her so much.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a tough question. I know AJ had some drinks in the past because I've seen some stuff from way back.
He quit.
He quit. Was he doing any kind of drugs at all?
No.
No drugs?
No drugs.
Okay. In case I ever do get to interview this Kim, what's your impression of this woman?
Why she lie? Why she act like it's like my family? She is like, I feel like something she want to tell my family. Me and her, we have something together. You know what I mean? Like we cheating behind my brother or something, because she go to my family and tell them, where's Mike? How are you, Mike? We don't know each other, me and her. The only thing I know about her from AJ. That's the only thing I know about her. So why is she make a lie? Like today, they told me she's supposed to take me to the hospital. She never take me to the hospital.
She's muddying the waters. She's making things murky and confusing.
To want this is what I be. She started with AJ to make a story about him, to let him, the family don't talk to him. She's doing the same thing to me. She want my family not talking to me. And this is why I feel my life is dangerous, because that woman, she's after something.
To get all sides of the story, we reached out to Arkan's ex multiple times, and she refused to talk to us. She hung up on me as soon as I told her who I was, after shouting, "I won't talk to you." Law enforcement agencies across our state are in a battle to recruit and retain qualified officers. But there are some people who feel that money could be spent in a better way. Shaun Scott is with the statewide Poverty Action Network. He thinks we spend too much on police and is the author of an article titled, "The Time to Abolish the Seattle Police Was Yesterday." Shaun, thanks for talking with us on the Spotlight. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on abolishing the police. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Violent crime in Seattle is up over 40%.
Right.
Why abolish police? How is that going to help things?
Mm-hmm. So I look at the discrepancy in our budget between what we spend as a city, speaking in the city of Seattle, what we spend on policing and what we spend on health and human services. At present, our budget as far as policing is concerned, I think we're spending upwards of 360, close to $370 million, okay? That is in excess of the budget that we spend on housing, our Office of Housing, Child Care Services, our Office of Civil Rights. So you have to ask the question, if we're spending so much with respect to traditional policing, and we have not seen the outcomes that we would like to see with respect to a reduction in crime, I know we're probably going to talk about homelessness at a certain point. How much more would we actually have to spend to get to the point where those problems go away? Or do you think that what we actually need to be doing is spending more on community investments in the middle of a pandemic that is 2 years long and running, in the middle of a recession with another one looking like it's on the horizon? These are very, very desperate times economically for a lot of people. So that's the first thing that I would think about, is a more holistic view of what our issues actually are as a city with respect to homelessness, with respect to crime. And I would also think about the fact that we could get to a point where we're spending a lot more on community investments. I think that's going to make it so that people actually have the security, the support that they need at the base level to be able to live and be free members of this society who are able to participate, enjoy everything that the Northwest has to offer. And we're not going to get there, I don't think, with the way that we have been going with respect to traditional investments on policing.
Well, I just got some information today on some recent violent crimes. We had a shooting at the Ballard Food Bank,
right,
where somebody was shot in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
Fentanyl dealing at 3rd and Pike.
Mm-hmm.
There was an assault in a tent, a homeless tent,
Right.
by a third strike candidate, violent assault.
Right.
The armed robbery at the hair salon, where the suspect came in,
Mm-hmm.
pointed the gun at the victim's head.
Mm-hmm.
All of these cases have suspects arrested. All of them have violent criminal histories.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do if we don't have police? How do these victims get justice?
Yeah, well, I would look at the fact that most crimes of the sort that you mentioned there, sordid crimes of the kind that you mentioned, police do not actually do as much as we might think to prevent or solve those kinds of crimes. I believe that the national rate of prevention with respect to violent crime is about 17% prevention. I can't imagine, as Seattle is, I think, broadly representative of a lot of urban America, generally speaking, that the number would be too much higher or less in the city of Seattle. So even if you were to bump it up and to say, police in any major city in Seattle would be able to prevent a quarter of those crimes, right? That's still 75% of crimes that are going to go either unsolved or unprevented. So there again, I think you have to look at what is the actual, what are the tasks that we're asking our police or police in the city to execute, number one. Have they been efficient at that with their levels of funding being greater now than they have been in years past? And if we don't believe that we're currently on the right track with that, don't we think it's actually time for a different approach? You did mention abolition in your opening question, something that I think is important for some of your viewers to actually pay attention to. There are currently no abolitionists in city government, right? Our former police chief, Carmen Best, was approved unanimously 8-0 by the Seattle City Council in 2018. The president of that city council is now currently our mayor. I might add that the King County GOP's two of their endorsed candidates in the latest round of city elections currently sit in Seattle City Council position 9 and in the city attorney's office, which is to say, with there being no abolitionists in city government, more folks in city government have, I think, a traditionalist view of policing. More police makes us safer, more police funding would make us safer. You would have to think that what we're actually seeing is the failures of a certain policy approach that has to do with the traditional form of policing. I think that we need to go in a different direction, explore a different direction, move in the direction of saying more community investment, more community support would actually make us a safer, more whole city.
Let me just challenge you there, because we have so many officers, 400 officers that left the Seattle Police Department. Violent crime is going up, so fewer officers is not helping.
Right.
So how do people stay safe, keep their families safe, if they call 911 and it's going to take 10 minutes for an officer to get there right now because we don't have enough police?
I think it's an excellent point, and this is part of the reason why a lot of folks have brought to the attention of folks who are in city government and saying, well, if we actually had, for example, a more comprehensively civilianized police response, if we actually had cops that were not responding to mental health crises, for example, then you would have law enforcement focusing on other things that would perhaps make people feel a little bit more safe. But I think that right now, for me, the core issue has to do with the fact that there are a lot of wasted resources on a philosophy that has proven to be failed decade after decade, generation after generation in the city.
So let me be clear. You don't think we get rid of police entirely. Mm-hmm. You think we're selective on where the money goes and then ask for results from the police. Is that correct? I mean, you want to see police out of their patrol cars and not with guns, or not?
I think the people who watch your show and people who are in the city of Seattle care a lot more about what we can do in the immediate term and not some far off fantasy that's however many years away. I'm talking about in the immediate term, a budgetary decision that could be made, but not only by the city of Seattle, but also by the state. I mean, in the state of Washington, we are spending upwards of $2.5 billion on a combination of the Department of Corrections and Washington State Patrol. Those are budgetary decisions that we are making. Results have not followed according to what people would like to see with safer streets, with more folks housed. And so given that reality, something has to be done in the short term, in the immediate term, that's perfectly achievable, which is redirecting some of those resources in the direction of community supports that will actually give people the support that they need.
We're coming up on 2 years since the protests on May 30th.
Right.
We covered them on Fox 13 News, wall to wall. And honestly, I can remember that day even saying on the air how upset I was, how disappointing it was. Where are the police? These cars are getting set on fire. They're breaking things and smashing windows downtown. That's where I come from. Where do you come from on this? And are people still carrying the pain from that day in your community?
I think people absolutely are. I think I look back at the fact that, I was one of, dozens and dozens of thousands of protesters who were out that day. It actually was not until I came back home and was watching your show that I got a fuller scope of what, the full scale of what it was that had happened across the city. And I think it was terribly unfortunate that the issues with respect to police accountability in the city had gotten to such a point that there are many people who felt this was going to be their opportunity to make their voices heard in a way that I think if we had city government that was more accountable, if we had city government that was much more responsive to people who were bringing up these issues for many years, whether it was Charlena Lyles, whether it was John T. Williams, rest their souls, those are issues that have been long running in the city of Seattle and in the country for a long time. And so I think there were a lot of people whose eyes were open, people who were in government, everyday people who didn't necessarily pay close attention to the issue of policing, more people who are Googling what exactly is a consent decree, why has the city of Seattle's police department been under one and under federal investigation for the last decade. These are issues that are really brought to light and brought to an inflection point in no less different a way than I think if you were to look 60 or 70 years ago or 50 or 60 years ago with the civil rights movement, many people who are turning their televisions on and getting a window into exactly what sort of issues were going on in communities that they might not belong to. And so at the same time that I think there are a lot of people that are still living with the pain, not just of the specific day, but also of the decades-long issue of unaccountable policing, there's still a lot of hope in that as well, because you see a lot more people tuned into what we can do, or tuned into and wondering about what could actually be done to make the situation better.
Some of the defunding, for particular at Seattle Police, or reallocation, got rid of the victims advocates at the department. So people who are victims of violent crime or their family members really don't have the support they need. I'm taking calls and spending hours on the phone every single day from people asking, what do I do? I need help. I'm concerned. I don't know how the courts work. So the reallocation as it stands now does not seem to be working. And I understand that we want to push social progress forward and try to get to the root causes.
Right.
But in the meantime, if people call 911, they want a cop to show up and protect them.
I think that where I live in the University District, we have in the University District sort of a police department unto itself with UW Police. A couple of years ago, I actually did speak to the person who was in the role of the victim advocate. I believe this was in 2018. And it really did leave an impression on me as far as the amount of people that did seek support from them as a service provider, not as a gun and badge officer of the law. So that if in fact what we're doing is we're taking resources away from programs like victim advocacy, I actually don't think that would be that would not be a course of direction that I would endorse, and I would say we should double down on. The second part of it, though, and I think this probably speaks more to the core of your question, is that the Seattle Police Department, for all intents and purposes, was never actually defunded, right? We had a number of, I think there was a portion that had to do with parking enforcement that was moved to the Seattle Department of Transportation. Another component that had to do with our 911 response that was moved to another standalone department. But as far as the bread and butter, if you will, of the Seattle Police Department's budget, that has remained largely unchanged. So here again, I think you can sort of see my point where we're getting to talking about, we haven't actually gone through with the defund movement, yet we are still seeing the failures of traditional policing. And so it kind of begs the question and points us in the direction of saying, I think what we actually would need to be doing is a change of philosophy and a course correction that would get us to a point where we're actually giving people what they need at a fundamental level. And under the auspices of city government right now, where we have about a $6 or $7 billion budget, I think it is, when $350, $360, $370 million of the discretionary spending is wrapped up in traditional policing, leaving the Office of Housing to go without, leaving Health and Human Services to go without, you can see where that's going to be a recipe for the kinds of breakdown that I think a lot of people who probably watch your show, a lot of people that are concerned about the city, have been seeing over the last couple of years, especially as economic desperation has really set hold in a lot of households and for a lot of folks who are houseless.
Do you think people hear that you're a police abolitionist and are immediately turned off without listening to the full argument that you're making?
I think that there's a potential for that, but I also think that when you actually sit down with folks who might have a difference of opinion with whatever that label might be, you can find out you actually want to have the same things. Nobody wants to live. I mean, Seattle is really supposed to be, a city that lives up to its reputation as a world-class city. I don't think that you can have that if you have, upwards of 12,000 people, 13,000 people sleeping on the streets countywide. I don't think that anybody envisioned our park system, which is in a lot of ways kind of the envy of a lot of urban areas in the country, a lot of other urban areas in the country, to be sustaining the life of people sleeping outside. That was not the intention, nor do I believe that the people who are actually hoisted into that situation, do I believe that they want to be there. So somewhere between the labels and the expectation, I think there has to be some common ground that's forged around the fact that we all need to work towards the same thing, and a failed policy or a failed view of policing, a traditional view of policing, has not gotten us the results that we would want. As a matter of fact, I think you could make the argument that as we have doubled down on that failed policy, our results have gotten worse. That's why we need to try something else.
If you could have things the way you want them, tell me about what Seattle looks like and the Pacific Northwest looks like when it comes to policing.
I think this is such an important question because so many of the conversations that take place around public safety generally and that take place around houselessness, that take place around crime, they're very defensive. It's a very negative conversation where we don't often get the chance to articulate what it is positively that we're hoping for. So the first thing that I think about, number one, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is the fact that we have so much disparity in the city of Seattle and in the state of Washington generally, right? The fact that we have, as many millionaires and billionaires as anywhere else in the country, but we also have people who are sleeping outside. The fact that we have communities that are close to gated, that are historically segregated, right? And de facto segregated, in fact, in the moment, but you also have people who are going without. So the first thing that I would say is that we actually need to reconcile that gap. And it's something that we talk about a lot and advocate for a lot at Statewide Poverty Action Network, is talking about economic justice in the form of a fairer tax code. So I think that you start with the material aspects of the problem, and suddenly after that it gets a lot easier, whether we're talking about building supportive housing, whether or not we're talking about more tiny home villages, whether or not we're talking about having connecting people to more services that they might need. All of that stems from the fact that there is, in essence, a revenue crisis, with Seattle being a very rich city in a state that has the 49th or 50th worst, most regressive tax code in the country. You're not going to get so far with an approach like that. So I really do start from the baseline material reality that we are living in a rich city, in a rich state. People shouldn't be in the situation that they're in, and if we fix that, I bet you we would see a lot more progress on some of the issues that we're talking about.
I agree with you. There's a lot of issues. I think it has to be two-pronged. I believe we need our police. I want my cops out there on the street, and I want more of them. I want to make sure my family feels safe, but I also agree that we need to help people and give them a lift and give them a hand up.
Right.
And I think we can do both of those.
Right.
I think both of those can happen without getting rid of the police.
And I'm sure that there are a lot of people who share your viewpoint as well. I think that while we're having this conversation, which I think is in some ways philosophical, where we're talking about various approaches that we were taking in the utopias that we would build or paint, there are material realities right now, decisions that are being made by lawmakers right now, things that we could do right now to devote more resources to get into that, to move us in the direction that I think we would both both prefer to go.
Yeah. Shaun, thank you for your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.